December 15th, 2021. In accordance with the Governor's Healthy Washington guidelines and to protect city employees and the members of the public from transmission of COVID-19, the City Council is conducting our weekly council meeting remotely. We are prepared to reopen the council chambers to public meetings when public health considerations indicate it is safe to do so. There are several ways in which you can engage with the council and participate in our meetings. To watch or participate in remote meetings, you may watch council meetings live on Comcast Channel 21 or Frontier Channel 29. You may watch live online at www.everettwa.gov/citycouncil, where you may also watch past meetings. You may also call in to listen to the live meeting at any point by calling 425-616-3920. Conference ID 724-887-726#. You may find the public comment registration form on the City of Everett website under the City Council Department. Once you select Register Here to provide a comment via Zoom, you will need to fill the form out completely if you wish to provide public comment at a future meeting. After the public comment form is submitted, you will receive an email confirmation with the Zoom link and the phone number to the meeting. Participants must submit the form at least 30 minutes prior to the meeting. Forms submitted after that time will not receive the Zoom link or number to speak, but may still participate the day of the meeting by submitting comments in writing to council@everettwa.gov. For assistance, please contact the council office at 425-257-8703 or email Deb Williams at dwilliams@everettwa.gov. And please note that we do not allow comments on any kind of campaigning, whether for or against ballot measures or candidates running for office. We also do not accept comments focused on personal matters that are unrelated to city business. Outside of our meetings, members of the public are always welcome to contact council members or provide comments or concerns on any matter via email at council@everettwa.gov or by calling the City Council office at 425-257-8703. Clerk, will you please take the roll?
Yes, Mayor Franklin.
Here.
Councilmember Vogely.
Excused.
Councilmember Roberts.
Here.
Councilmember Toohey.
Here.
Councilmember Moore.
Here.
Councilmember Murphy.
Here.
President Stonecipher.
Here.
Councilmember Bader is here as well. Thanks.
Thank you, Councilmember
Thank you.
Bader. I would like to call on Councilmember Moore to read the land acknowledgement this evening.
Yes, it would be an honor, and I apologize for not having my camera on, but I also see that you're all watching what I'm reading. I just want to say that the City Council wishes to acknowledge the original inhabitants of this place, the Stohogish people and their successors, the Tulalip tribes. Since time immemorial, they have hunted, fished, and gathered and taken care of these lands and waters. We respect their sovereignty, their right to self-determination, and they honor their sacred spiritual connections with the land and the water. We strive to be honest about the past mistakes and bring about a future that includes their peoples, their stories, and voices to form a more just and equitable society. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Bader, would you please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Will do. Thanks. If you join me in the flag salute, I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
Thank you. Do I hear a motion for the approval of the minutes of December 8th, 2021?
Councilmember Bader so moves.
Roberts, second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the minutes. Clerk, will you please take the roll?
Councilmember Roberts.
Yes.
Councilmember Toohey.
Yes.
Councilmember Moore.
Yes.
Councilmember Murphy.
Yes.
Councilmember Bader.
Yes.
President Stonecipher.
Yes. And we will move on to Mayor Franklin. Good evening, Mayor.
Good evening, Council President. Good evening, Council members. I had a couple of brief remarks tonight. First, I want to start by acknowledging that this evening is Sharon Fuller's last council meeting. Sharon has been our city clerk for the last 9 years and a team member at the city since 1994, serving in a variety of roles and in our administration, our human resources, and our finance departments. After nearly 30 years, she's decided to retire. And so I just wanted to express my appreciation for Sharon and all the work that she's done here at the city. Her leadership in the clerk's office has focused on delivering excellent customer service and providing really convenient options for our residents and businesses to access the city and our services. She's worked with the team to develop File Local, which is our multi-city online portal for business licensing and tax filing. She also spearheaded the development of our own internal tax and license system of record. She was instrumental in the development of our digital record center, as well as our new online residential and commercial parking permit application. And she's been working to develop our new contract management system, which we hope to launch in the next couple of months. Obviously, those are just a couple of her accomplishments. Throughout her career, she has demonstrated a commitment to continuous improvement here at the city and superior customer service. So I just want to say a big thank you, Sharon. We're going to miss you so much and wish you the very best in your very well-deserved retirement. The second thing I'd like to share is just a reminder that to our residents that this weekend is Holidays at Gibson event, which is taking place at the Saturday and Sunday at the Carl Gibson Senior Center. It's like kind of a holiday open house. So from 2 to 5, it's for those 50 and over. And from 5 to 8, it's open to the entire community for the weekend. It will be a lot of fun. And I've been told that Santa, Scott Bader, is expected to make a guest appearance. So thank you for doing that, Councilmember Bader. The center is officially going to reopen on January 3rd, which I know is welcome news for all of us. And really just want to say a big thank you to the Volunteers of America for their partnership with us on getting the Senior Center reopened. And lastly, when we get to administrative update, we want to follow through on a request from Councilmember Murphy on some data and calls around Claire's Place. So Nick and Lori will be inviting Julie Woolley forward to share some of that information with you and hopefully answer any questions. And that's all I have for this evening. Thanks so much, council members.
Great, thank you. And we'll move on to council comments and liaison reports. And we're going to start with Councilmember Bader.
Sorry, I thought I was up next to last, but I'll go forward. So a couple items. Just would say in response to the mayor's remarks that between now and Sunday, I could use a lot more Christmas cookies. So feel free to drop them off. Ho, ho, ho. And my other remark would be to bring forward the resolution I earlier proposed and read last week about concerning potential community impacts of an emergency shelter and or temporary housing facility. It was shared with my fellow council members as well. Council President, I read it last week. Unless you want me to read it this week, I was going to hold off, but whatever you desire, I will do in regards to that.
Why don't we read it into the record?
Okay, certainly. So a resolution concerning potential community impacts of an emergency shelter and or temporary housing facility. Whereas the City of Everett recognizes the crisis of homelessness in our city and supports a range of solutions, including emergency shelter and temporary and transitional housing. The city is committed to working with its nonprofit and governmental partners to develop such solutions. Snohomish County has proposed purchasing a hotel or motel within the city for use as temporary housing, transitional housing, and or emergency shelter space. The city intends to monitor and mitigate impacts of any such project on the surrounding neighborhood to ensure the success of the project while protecting the quality of life of other city residents. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the conversion of a hotel or motel to temporary or transitional housing and or emergency shelter space should be designed and managed to minimize impacts on the surrounding neighborhood. The city will monitor the impacts of any such facility, and if there is any increase in police or fire calls for service or citizen complaints or other relevant measure, the city council shall direct the city attorney to prepare for council's consideration a proposed no sit, no lie ordinance or similar ordinance intended to mitigate impacts of the facility on the surrounding neighborhood. And as last week, I want to thank administration, especially City Attorney Hall, for help drafting this in response to my and Councilmember Murphy's request. And I just think it's it at least reassures the neighborhood around wherever the county may locate or purchase a motel. If it's within the city of Everett, provides them some reassurance that the council and the city will do everything they can to mitigate any negative impacts that may crop up in response to that. So with that, I guess I'd formally make the motion for that, if appropriate, Council President, and hopefully would find a
Thank
second.
you.
And Council
Thank
President, as discussed at the prior meeting, I would second that motion.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second on the table to adopt the resolution. We'll go down the roll to see if we have any questions or comments. We'll move to Council Member Roberts.
Thanks, President Stonecipher. Thank you, Scott, for bringing that forward. I appreciate the work you did with City Attorney Hall to bring this forward. And I also appreciate that it's intended to respond to real issues as they may arise, as opposed to looking prospectively and not really knowing. I mean, it's a call and response issue, and it's structured to provide public safety. And so I just appreciate that work, and I'm happy to support it. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Toohey.
Yes, thank you. And I want to thank Councilmember Bader for bringing this forward. I will support it. I think that, we don't really know what the management plan is yet for an intended purchase of a hotel with the county, but we are certainly hoping that they will have a very well thought out management plan, which would go a long ways to mitigating any problems in the neighborhood. So I do look forward to that, and hopefully we will not have to worry about enacting this as we move forward with a good solid management plan. But I will support this just in case we need it. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Moore.
Yes, thank you very much. Thank you, Councilmember Bader and Councilmember Murphy. I think this is very well structured. We knew as a city when we embarked on Claire's Place, and that by using city property, we had complete control over creating a structure that we all knew was effective and safe, and yet our community was concerned about negative impacts. And it's important to point out to our community that the sound of having a shelter doesn't necessarily mean there's going to be significant negative impacts. But as your city leaders, you rely upon us to make sure that we make sure that they don't happen. And so this is the type of resolution that, because you can't define an ordinance because you don't know the specifics, but I really believe that it gives our city the tools to have the leverage to ensure that when we do meet the neediest individuals of our property, it doesn't have an impact on our neighbors around there. So I fully support this.
Thank you. Move to Councilmember Murphy.
Yeah, just agree with the comments that have been made. Appreciate Councilmember Bader's work on bringing this forward. And, I just would point out that while this does put some obligation onto the city to monitor this situation, and agree with Councilmember Moore, it's a little different to sort of understand what the impacts might be when we haven't really seen the plan and the operating agreement and that sort of thing. But this does put an obligation on the city to monitor what's going on there, and at least allows for the opportunity to consider a no sit, no lie if that sort of tool might be effective down the road, depending on how that operation pans out. So appreciate, again, Councilmember Bader, you for bringing this forward, and certainly will be supporting the motion.
Thank you. And I too appreciate the carefully constructed language in this resolution. I think there's often fear of the unknown, but there can also be legitimate concerns that can be raised. And again, without a lot of understanding about what the management plan would be like that the county is going to put in place in conjunction with the purchase of a motel or hotel, it makes sense that we would have a way of, for us, if for no other reason, this will require that information come back to the council so that we can see what's going on. I think there's some good results from just that alone. So I will support it. I'll give Councilmember Bader one more chance to say any comments if you'd like to before I ask the mayor if she'd like to weigh in.
My only comment would have been to ask if the mayor could weigh in. So I am done with my comments. Thank you.
Thank you. Mayor Franklin, would you like to make a comment on this item?
Sure. Thank you. Just appreciate Councilmember Bader and Councilmember Murphy's willingness to work with administration to make sure that this is something very positive, and it really allows us to bring this back to you all to decide to enact if we start to see those problems. So our goal of course is to work with the county to make sure that we have a real tight management plan and a good plan for whatever programming is going to happen out of this new center, that it's going to be a very positive impact on our community, reduce homelessness and not increase challenges in our neighborhoods. But it's nice to have this at the ready should we need it. And then the city attorney will definitely bring it back to the council next year if we notice that there's challenges around this area, which, as you stated, Councilmember Bader, should provide a very nice comfort to the neighborhood that will have this program in it. So appreciate it and happy to support it as well.
Thank you. Everyone has spoken. Clerk, will you please take the roll?
Councilmember Bader?
Yes.
Councilmember Roberts?
Yes.
Councilmember Toohey?
Yes.
Councilmember Moore?
Yes.
Councilmember Murphy?
Yes.
President Stonecipher?
Yes.
That's all the remarks and report I have. Thank you, Council President.
Thank you. We'll move on to Councilmember Roberts.
Thanks, President Stonecipher. I have just two really quick comments. First, I want to wish Sharon Fuller the very best in the next phase of her life. I have had the very good fortune to have worked with her in some form or fashion throughout her career in the city. And so she has served the public with great skill and dedication. And thank you, Sharon, for your great work. And just wish you all the best in wherever your life takes you next. And then the other comment I have is just to wish citizens really happy holidays, and just to remind everyone that if you have the option to do your Christmas shopping locally, that's a really good thing to do, and encourage everyone to do so. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Toohey.
Yeah, I don't have any liaison or other comments tonight, other than I just want to wish Sharon a wonderful retirement, and whatever you do, you seem like you're too young to retire, but I always enjoyed your pleasant attitude, and you're just always such a nice person to speak with and ask questions of, and take care of us. So thank you so much, Sharon. Appreciate it so much.
Thank you. Councilmember Moore.
Sharon, congratulations as well. Our paths have similarly crossed in so many different mediums. So you must be everywhere all the time. But thank you for your representation of the work you do for our city, and wish you the best. No other comments tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Murphy.
Thank you, Council President. My only comment is to add my thanks and congratulations to Sharon on her retirement. You know, for many of our community members, the city clerk's office is their only contact with the city, and there's so many other things that Sharon has been responsible for and involved in behind the scenes for the city. And I think the mayor did a really nice job of listing just a few of those. But Sharon, best wishes to you, and congratulations, and thank you for all your service to our community. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. I will make my comments, and then Councilmember Bader, I see your hand up. I'll get back to you. And I just want to say that in every organization, there are some jobs that really are, they're unsung heroes that make them happen, and they're key to the success of the organization overall. The clerk's office is certainly one of those departments, and Sharon's leadership down there has been absolutely amazing. Our residents and citizens will never know the value that Sharon, that you've brought to their lives and to all of our lives. And I think a highlight is your work on the File Local initiative. That is something that I use in my day job as a business owner. It has really greatly improved reporting and just the ability for business owners to be timely with their reporting and their tax payments. So that is certainly an improvement that has helped the city and helped our taxpayers because we get better revenue through File Local. And I appreciate so much your leadership in making that happen. Wishing you a fun retirement and lots of good days ahead. Councilmember Bader.
Thanks, Council President. Very sorry I got distracted for my remarks, and just want to chime in and add my thank you to Sharon for all you've done for us, as well as all in Everett residents and business as well. And just say ditto to everything else my fellow council members have said. Congratulations on your retirement. Hope you enjoy it, and would agree that you look way too young to retire. So I wish all of us got to retire that early. Have a great one. Thank you.
Thank you. Now we'll move on. Do we have an update from administration this evening?
Yeah, thank you, Council President Stonecipher. Nick Harper, as the mayor indicated, Julie Willie has, our Community Development Director, has an update in response to, I believe, some questions she's received from Council.
I apologize for the delay. Hold on just one second. Good evening. I'm Julie Willie. I'm the Community Development Director, and I'm here to share some information about the calls for emergency services at Claire's Place, which was recently requested by Councilmember Murphy. As you may know, Claire's Place is a permanent supportive housing complex, which opened in July of 2019. It was developed with the Housing First approach to permanently house individuals who are chronically homeless and needed low barrier access to stable housing. It was recognized that these individuals were overusing police and fire services, as well as our hospitals, jails, and courts, and were highly impacting residents and businesses citywide. Housing these individuals and attaching supportive services in one place has directed our emergency response to one location versus all throughout the city, and has also allowed us to work directly with Catholic Community Services to problem solve challenges that reoccur. The numbers I'm about to share are just a snapshot from both the Everett Police Department and Everett Fire and EMS. It's important to keep in mind that they do not include the stories behind each call for service, which reflect a variety of factors, ranging from a noisy animal complaint to assault. The numbers don't convey whether an incident occurred in a unit or outside the building, whether the incident involved the actual resident of Claire's Place, and how severe the incident was. With that caveat, here are some data points. Since July 2019, Everett Fire and EMS was dispatched 338 times, averaging about 12 times per month. Of these calls, a third of them were for the same 6 residents. Just to note, during that first year of Claire's Place being open, some 34 of the calls were for someone setting off their fire alarm. In 2021, however, we have had no calls for setting off fire alarms. A quarter of these calls were joint fire and police responses. Everett Police were called out 445 times over that same time period. And as mentioned, many of them were with joint fire and EMS. Many of the calls for service were nuisance related and do not always include residents of Claire's Place. Similar to fire, police responded to a disproportionate number of calls and services from 5 or 6 residents who were high utilizers. So I understand that you requested these numbers following a discussion about using a hotel for shelter. However, I wanted to be very clear that Claire's Place is not a hotel shelter program. Rather, it's a low barrier permanent supportive housing that is expected to have a higher volume of calls for service based on the population living there. We are in the process of gathering specific calls for service to the hotels in Everett that currently are serving as non-congregate shelter sites. These programs are currently funded by our county and managed by social service agencies and have been instrumental in assisting us with providing shelter to several individuals over the past several months, many who have now transitioned into long-term housing. We will also provide you with a snapshot of other hotels in our city that tend to have a high volume of call, so you'll have that perspective as well. And I just want to say thank you, of course, to Chief Templeman and Chief DeMarco for contributing to this update, because without their data and their supportive staff, I wouldn't have this information. So certainly I'll email you as soon as the information is complete so that you have additional information. Thank you.
Thank you. And I'm going to go down the roll because we may have some questions here. We'll start with Councilmember Bader.
Thank you, Council President. Just appreciate the statistics. Would look forward to maybe getting them in written form, and that deeper dive that you talked about, comparing those to other hotels, would be very helpful to see that. A striking number, I must say. It was a shocking number, and appreciate your information to put those in context as well. Thanks.
Thank you. Councilmember Roberts.
Well, first, thanks for the questions, Julie. Thanks for the response, and thanks to those who contributed to it. There is, and I mean this with all due respect, the data point is interesting, but the question of compared to what, and that's been noted, is really the more interesting question. For instance, Catholic Community Services does a great job, and some of the reason we're getting the calls is because people are paying attention to the needs of the residents, as opposed to what would they look like if those residents weren't there and Catholic Community Services wasn't providing the service. So I mean, there are a lot of complexities to that, and you noted that, and I really appreciate that. So I think this is interesting and useful information, but it's useful only if it can be put into a context that shows that these service calls are really, excuse me, helping provide the services that we need, and not allowing those concerns and issues to be collateral issues in the community, as opposed to being responded to, in a setting where the services actually, really work for both the residents and the community. So that's all I have, but I really appreciate. I think this kind of discussion is exactly what we need. Excuse me, is actually exactly what we need going forward on these facilities. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Toohey.
Yeah, thanks. I appreciate Councilmember Roberts' insight and his comments. I think I agree with that. I don't know, Julie, if they have any statistics that they could bring forward on if there were any calls from the neighborhood in regards to any of the residents, or was this just strictly in-house type of calls? So I would be curious to see what, if we have a history of the impact in the neighborhood. So that would be all I would ask for additionally. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, I think that this is based on calls for service to the address of Claire's Place. So the neighborhood, I'm not exactly sure, and that's certainly something we can follow up on.
Okay, thank you.
The mayor's office has not got a lot of calls, I have to admit. So, and nor has the council, I believe. So I think that anecdotally, I can say that we are okay.
Yes, we did hear before it opened.
Yeah,
so
absolutely. You heard a lot in the beginning, for sure.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Moore.
I think everybody else has covered my comments. Considering the pandemic and everything we've experienced, it's not a surprise to me, and I think Councilmember Roberts appropriately talked about the metrics compared to other things. I can't fathom that the positive impact of Claire's Place hasn't made a difference, and we just need to pursue avenues to get people the help they need.
Thank you. Councilmember Murphy?
Yes, thanks, Council President. Julie, thank you for bringing that forward at my request. I think those questions came from me in the context of the proposed county hotel, which you alluded to. I too, like Councilmember Bader and perhaps others, am a little bit surprised just at the number of calls. I think kind of like to see it in writing, but I was trying to make track of the notes you referred to, but I think it's like 800 calls in the past 2.5 years, which, if my math is right, I think it's like every single day there's a call for service at this address, whether it's fire or police, roughly. So I'm a little surprised by that. You know, I supported Claire's Place, and I still support Claire's Place, and I do think it's done a lot of good in our community. But I know that as part of my due diligence, and I think colleagues as well, during the process leading up to approving Claire's Place, some of us went and visited other cities and other communities that had similar type operations. And I know, for example, I went to Bellingham and visited the Catholic Community Services facility in Bellingham, slightly smaller building as I recall. But, you know, in terms of trying to put context to these numbers, I think that might be worth asking Catholic Services to provide us some data from some of their other facilities to try to find out whether or not our Claire's Place operation is somewhat similar in terms of the call volume relative to some of their other facilities, because they do have a lot of other facilities that they operate. So again, agree that it needs to be put into context, but I do think we need to ask and push a little bit for that information. You know, when I went on my tour of the place up in Bellingham, one of the things that the staff there made very clear was that while this is low barrier housing, it's not no barrier housing. And so there are barriers to entry, there are lease agreements that are signed, there are rules that the residents are required to abide by for not only their protection, but the protection of the staff, as well as the other residents and community members living nearby. And so while I don't get a lot of people calling me about Claire's Place or problems, and sounds like maybe the mayor's office doesn't either, I do think that it would be worth us, since we are funding some of the operations and subsidizing the cost of this, I do think it would be worth us asking some of those questions and pushing for some answers, trying to find out whether or not Catholic Services is truly following up with the people that are causing the majority of these calls. If it's 6 or 7 people that are causing hundreds and hundreds of calls, you know, what is the nature of that, and how does that fit into the lease agreements that these people have to sign, and are they in fact still eligible to stay? So those are some of the questions I have. I think this is a great start. Glad we got at least a glimpse of it verbally, and like others would like to see a little bit more in terms of the written report. But I do think there's some more work to be done here moving forward to try to understand and put into context what we're seeing at Claire's Place, and obviously for the sole purpose of trying to understand whether it can be made better and whether those numbers of calls for service could somehow be reduced as we move forward. So that's really all I have. Thanks again for bringing that forward, and look forward to hearing more about that. Thank you.
I might also just remind us all that we knew that these individuals had high volumes of calls when they were throughout our community. And I would gander that by having them in one location and to be able to deal with these individuals in a contained environment is a less impact for our community members. And of those 800 people that you quickly did that math for, the incident call is, there's, I think, 27 different types of calls. Some of them are medical, some of them are co-response between our fire and our police. Some of them are individuals that are just having really hard mental health crises, and they call 911 on their own because now they're empowered to do that because they have a safe place to do that, or they feel unsafe. So there's so many nuances. So it's very difficult to just give you a presentation that goes into the details of these really in-depth mental health challenges and behavioral health challenges that the individuals that are living at Claire's Place deal with, and that Catholic Community Services is dealing with. And so that is the intention of that facility all along. And so, you know, I absolutely will look forward to providing you with more of those details so you can see, you know, what exactly they're being called for, so that you understand maybe some of the more challenging individuals that they're dealing with in our community, that I think that the city administration would rather have them at Claire's Place than on Colby or Broadway or Evergreen Way. And so thank you so much for your comments, and I'll definitely try and follow up as soon as I possibly can.
Thank you, Julie. Well, for my comments, I was going to bring up the very same thing, I think, Julie, that you mentioned. There was a lot of work that was done in advance of Claire's Place being cited, and it was some great work on the part of the COIT team, I believe, in identifying sort of the frequent flyers of people who were calling. I think there, as I recall, there were some people that we were trying to get off the streets who were calling 911 more than once a day. So having them housed, I don't know if that has reduced the number of calls. I'd be very interested in seeing that original study. Julie, if you can pull that up and help us to look and do some analysis on the change in the number of calls. Because as I recall, there were like a dozen people that were, again, calling 911 at least daily or nearly daily. And then there were others down the line from that, but there were some very, very frequent flyers in utilizing our emergency management services. From my perspective, even if the call volume is the same and we have people housed, that's a win, because we've got people out of our streets, off of our business door stoops, out of our neighborhoods, out of people's backyards, and in a safe place where they can deal with their mental health and other issues in a safe way that keeps them out of the elements and keeps them out of the places where we would like not to have people living, because it's not healthy for them and not healthy for us and difficult for our residents to navigate. So I'm not worried about these call volumes, because my guess is that these are lower than what we were experiencing before. I'll be very surprised to see if that isn't the case. But really would love to see that information. I think that's very helpful. And it also can help us tell the story about these types of, you know, the whole goal of providing housing. I'd be very sad to hear if there was, you know, if somebody in this program was not allowed to stay because they were having mental health issues and had to call 911 frequently, or felt like they needed to. To me, that would seem counterproductive to the goal of getting them off the streets and into a place where we can at least try to provide services to them. Of course, it's difficult to do that if people don't want those services. But so I'll look forward to more data analysis of this. I think it's a really, really important story for us to tell our community, particularly as we move forward trying to cite new and very different types of housing solutions in our community. I think that our community is going to demand, and we should be able to provide them with some feedback and some reports on how those different types of housing units are working. If there are ways that Catholic Housing Services can improve their processes for those poor, sick individuals who just feel, you know, for whatever reason, feel compelled to call 911 on a regular basis, would be, you know, helpful and instructive, perhaps also for them as a as the manager of the facility, and it would help us design those operating models as we look forward to new facilities in our community. So lots of good stuff. Julie, thank you for bringing that to us. I too will look forward to sort of the written numbers to dig into those. And anything else from administration tonight?
Nothing else, Council President Stonecipher. Thank you so much.
Thank you. We'll move on to city attorney comments. Mr. Hall, what do you have for us this evening?
Thank you. I don't have anything to report. I do want to add my thanks to Sharon Fuller. The city attorney's office relies heavily on the clerk's office and on Sharon, and is mainly behind the scenes, but she's been a joy to work with, and I want to wish her well and add my thanks to the council members. Thank you, Sharon. We are requesting a 40-minute executive session tonight to discuss 5 matters. 2 are labor matters pursuant to RCW 4230-144A, and 3 are legal matters pursuant to RCW 4230-110, 1I3, with potential council action to follow on 2 of those matters. Thank you.
Thank you. Deb Williams, have we received any comments from the community for our public comment section?
Good evening, President Stonecipher. We received 1 written comment from Katrina Lindahl on item 18, and we have no one waiting to speak at this time. Thank you.
Thank you. Do I hear a motion for the 7 consent items?
Roberts moves 7 consent items.
Bader, second.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. Clerk, will you please take the roll?
Councilmember Bader,
Yes.
Councilmember Roberts,
Yes.
Councilmember Tui,
Yes.
Councilmember Moore, Councilmember Moore, Councilmember Murphy,
Yes.
President Stonecipher.
Yes. We have 10 items on for proposed action. They're all second readings, so I will not read them into the record. Do we have any questions on any of the 10 items on for proposed action? If so, please unmute yourself and make yourself known. Hearing none, we will move on to our action items. Item 18, adopt the resolution accepting the public works site area selection study, that's a lot of S's, and authorizing pre-design activities. Do I hear a motion?
Councilmember Bader, so moves.
Do I hear a second?
Councilmember Tui seconds the motion.
Thank you. We'll move down, we'll go down the roll. Councilmember Bader.
Thanks, Council President. Yeah, great information and briefing last week. Ryan Sass got back to me with some additional information I had about rates and the impact of not choosing the lowest cost option. So appreciate that, alleviated concerns I had regarding that. And just would encourage council members and administration to Katrina Lindahl's comments, which certainly would mirror my own in terms of impact on the Riverside neighborhood and potential traffic on Everett Avenue as this goes forward. Other than that, that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Roberts.
Thank you. I don't really have much to add, but I do appreciate the Ms. Lindahl's comments and Councilmember Bader's comments. If this is the direction we go in, and I also want to thank the people who and our staff. This has been with us for some time, so we do need to move forward. But I'm hopeful, and I believe we would have a very robust public involvement process that will follow. So there will be opportunities to address impacts, mitigation, and so on. So other than that, I have nothing further to add.
Thank you. Councilmember Tui.
Yeah, I don't have any further questions or comments at this time. Thank you.
Councilmember Moore.
Yes, sorry, I had some technical difficulties. I have no further comments either.
Thank you. Councilmember Murphy.
Yeah, just appreciate the work that's been done here. You know, if you look back, this is actually almost a 3-year process that we've been working on to get to this point. And I like the direction. that we're headed. I like the fact that we have also a plan to keep our backup options on the table, so we're not precluding a different outcome if it ends up getting down the road a ways and for some reason it's determined that this Epic site is not the preferred site any longer, or something else comes in front of it. But we have to make progress. We have to keep moving down a path, and this allows us to do that. So I'm happy to support this item. Thank you.
Thank you. And I too am happy to support this. I think this is one more step forward, and happy to be taking that step. Clerk, will you please take the roll?
Councilmember Bader,
Yes.
Councilmember Roberts,
Yes.
Councilmember Tui,
Yes.
Councilmember Moore,
Yes.
Councilmember Murphy,
Yes.
President Stonecipher.
Yes. Item 19, Council Bill 2111-57, third and final reading. Adopt the proposed ordinance establishing the basic salary schedule for City of Everett employees for 2022. Do I have a motion?
Councilmember Bader so moves.
Second.
Roberts, second.
Thank you. We'll go down the roll, starting with Councilmember Bader.
Oops, no comments or questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Roberts.
No comments or questions. Thanks.
Thank you. Councilmember Tui.
No questions or comments.
Councilmember Moore.
No questions or comments.
Councilmember Murphy.
No questions or comments. Thank you.
And I have no questions or comments. Clerk, will you please take the roll?
Councilmember Bader,
Yes.
Councilmember Roberts,
Yes.
Councilmember Tui,
Yes.
Councilmember Moore,
Yes.
Councilmember Murphy,
Yes.
President Stonecipher.
Yes. Item 20, Council Bill 2111-58, third and final reading. Adopt the proposed ordinance amending Section 1C of Ordinance 1594-89 as amended by Section 1 of Ordinance number 2879-05, establishing Juneteenth as a city holiday. Is there a motion?
Roberts moves item 20.
Second, Bader.
Thank you. We'll go down the roll. Councilmember Bader.
Thanks, Council President. Just note that this would, I think, line up now with what state holidays are. So understand why we're moving forward as well on this. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Roberts.
Yeah, thanks. I concur with Councilmember Bader, and also just delighted to see this come forward, and the importance of recognizing this holiday is just huge. And so it's a delight to move it forward. Thank you. That's all.
Thank you. Councilmember Tui.
Yeah, I'm really happy to see this come forward. I think it's a very important step for our city and our county, our country to take in recognizing Juneteenth, and very happy about this. So thank you. No other questions or comments.
Thank you. Councilmember Moore.
Just similarly support. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Murphy.
No questions or comments. Thanks.
And I have no questions or comments. I'm happy to see this align with the state holiday that's been declared. That, clerk, will you please take the roll?
Councilmember Bader,
Yes.
Councilmember Roberts,
Yes.
Councilmember Tui,
Yes.
Councilmember Moore,
Yes.
Councilmember Murphy,
Yes.
President Stonecipher.
Yes. Item 21, Council Bill 2111-56, third and final reading. Adopt the proposed ordinance approving the appropriations of the 2021 revised City of Everett budget and amending ordinance number 3827-21. Do I have a motion?
Murphy moves approval.
Councilmember Tui seconds the motion.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. We'll go down the roll, starting with Councilmember Bader.
Yeah, thanks for all the good work to city staff bringing this forward to us, and sad for the things that couldn't be included that we would have loved to, but grateful for all the hard work to bring us to this point as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Roberts.
Just Echo all that. Thanks everyone for getting us to this point, and I have no other comments or questions.
Thank you, Councilmember Tui.
No questions or comments.
Councilmember Moore.
Just echo and want to continue to reinforce to our community. We have an amazing financial staff that really provides great stewardship of our resources. And as a council, we rely upon that. And I'm happy to support this effort.
Thank you, Councilmember Murphy.
No further comments. Thank you.
And I have no further comments. Clerk, will you please take the roll?
Councilmember Bader,
Yes.
Councilmember Roberts,
Yes.
Councilmember Tui,
Yes.
Councilmember Moore,
Yes.
Councilmember Murphy,
Yes.
President Stonecipher.
Yes. Item 22, Council Bill 2111-60, third and final reading. Adopt the proposed ordinance extending the special business and occupation tax rate, amending ordinance 3711-19. Do I have a motion?
Councilmember Bader, so moves.
Roberts, second.
We have a motion and a second. Let's go down the roll. Councilmember Bader,
No comments or questions. Thank you.
Councilmember Roberts,
No comments or questions. Thanks.
Councilmember Tui,
No questions or comments. Thank you.
Councilmember Moore,
I go back to the ditto.
Councilmember Murphy,
No questions or comments. Thank you.
and I have nothing to add. Clerk, will you please take the roll?
Councilmember Bader,
Yes.
Councilmember Roberts,
Yes.
Councilmember Tui,
Yes.
Councilmember Moore,
Yes.
Councilmember Murphy,
Yes.
President Stonecipher.
Yes. Item 23, Council Bill 2111-59, third and final reading. Adopt the proposed ordinance creating a special improvement project entitled Evergreen Pump Station Upgrades, Fund 336, Program 007, and repealing ordinance number 3729-20. Do I hear a motion?
Councilmember Bader, so moves.
Murphy, second.
Okay, we'll go down the roll. Councilmember Bader,
No questions or comments. Thank you.
Councilmember Roberts,
No questions or comments. Thanks.
Councilmember Tui,
No questions or comments.
Councilmember Moore,
Ditto.
Councilmember Murphy.
No questions. Thanks.
I have no questions or comments. Clerk, will you please take the roll?
Councilmember Bader,
Yes.
Councilmember Roberts,
Yes.
Councilmember Tui,
Yes.
Councilmember Moore,
Yes.
Councilmember Murphy,
Yes.
President Stonecipher.
Yes. Now we'll move on to the council briefing agenda. These items come before the City Council serving as a council committee of the whole and are likely to be scheduled at a future meeting. Item 24 is authorize the mayor to sign the Promulgation Memorandum for the City of Everett Comprehensive Emergency Management Plan. And I believe we have Brett Stainer here to start us off. Is that correct?
Yes, I'm here. Thank you very much. I appreciate this opportunity. I'd like to just touch on the hazard mitigation plan just briefly.
Brent, your video is turned around, so just, there you go. Great.
Okay, so I'd like to just mention briefly the hazard mitigation plan that we actually adopted in 2018. I was asked upon its adoption to give a update halfway through, and this is about that time. So that plan is actually organized into 5 sections: infrastructure, buildings, training and exercise, planning, and then waterfront and the port. And I'd be happy to share more details with that upon request, but I know we also need to get to the CEMP. But in a just summarizing very briefly, the status of that is we are slowly making some progress on our hazard mitigation plan. Some of the highlights is that we've in the infrastructure side of it, we've been able to provide some detectors for the shake alert earthquake early warning system that we participate in regionally, and we actually have some detectors at the service center and at the water filtration plant. So that's been a good step forward. With the building section, we actually have worked with a contractor to do some seismic upgrade designs for the some of the buildings at the Cedar complex, and I'm sure Ryan Sass can provide much more detail on that as well. But that's some place we've made some progress. Our training and exercise has been hampered because of COVID. We do provide training for our city employees as well as for our population, but that has taken a bit of a hit because of COVID. As far as planning, our efforts there are continuing to move forward. We're actually continuing on several fronts, but we're actually nearing completion of a plan that would actually improve transportation of critical workers after an earthquake. And then the waterfront and port, some of what we're doing there is we've actually are continuing to work with the Port of Everett and other stakeholders concerning their very unique risks that they have down on the waterfront. And this last summer, we were able to get installed an all hazard and broadcast siren, tsunami sirens in 2 locations down at the port. So we are making some progress on the hazard mitigation plan. We're pleased with what we're doing, but we still have a lot more work to do. Our next update for that plan is actually scheduled in 2023, but we'll actually begin the process for that next year. So if you would like more details on that, we would certainly be happy to provide that for you. I know that's just a very quick snippet of what we are doing there. So I would like to transition to the Comprehensive Emergency Management Plan. The CEMP is basically that is our plan that we're going to use during a disaster. So the importance of this is that there's so many elements that we can put in position beforehand so we can actually respond in an effective way during a disaster and not have to try to improvise from scratch. So this plan is unique in how we've designed it, in that it's kind of a playbook format, meaning that a lot of the critical information we've presented in this plan before an event takes place. So we have a lot of our facts that are necessary for decision making during a disaster right literally at the tips of our fingers, along with several different recommended plays or functions that we could do to help mitigate the problem. So we're pretty excited about this, and it's been a long time bringing this together, but we're proud of it, and I think this is going to serve the city very well. However, I would like to actually introduce Sarah Lavelle. Sarah is our EOC coordinator and emergency planner. She's been here for 7 years now, and she's been very involved with the CEMP. And Sarah, why don't you go ahead and take over, and you can give us some more information about how the CEMP works.
Great, thank you, Brent. Good evening, everybody. Let's see if I can make the slide go. There we go. All right. So I'm going to talk a little bit just what kind of the contents of the CEMP are. So the first element is the basic plan, and this is kind of the overall look at how Everett's going to respond in a disaster before, during, and after. It addresses some of the basic functions, some of which are required elements, like establishing that we're going to use the National Incident Management System or Incident Command System to organize ourselves. And that's the national standard that allows us to better coordinate with other agencies who are also using that standard. So there are required elements like that. One big piece is the general roles and responsibilities of city departments. And that's what this image here shows. This is pulled directly from the plan, so it can be viewed there for more detail, but I want to give an idea of kind of the concept here. So the middle blue circle is daily operations that city departments and divisions are responsible for, and those are going to continue in a disaster in many situations. So those are always going to be a factor. The yellow circle in the middle are responsibilities in a disaster that all departments and divisions will have, reporting damage assessment information, potentially staffing the emergency operations center, and also ensuring department readiness, so ensuring that their department is able to respond as needed. So the red circle with all the text are some of those additional disaster operations that we've identified for the different departments and divisions. And these come from many conversations we've had at monthly emergency management liaison meetings, from exercises and tabletop kind of scenarios. And these responsibilities are identified based on some of the skill sets that fall in those departments. You know, which departments are most appropriate to address certain things. And of course, these are dependent on what the needs of the disaster are. whether or not other agencies are capable outside of the city of providing those services, and then what the capabilities of the department are at the time, is the staffing and the resources to be able to carry those out. The important part about including them in the CEMP is as a planning element. So as we begin to plan for some of these things in more detail, we know who to bring to the table and who may be responsible to help build that plan out in a little bit more detail. The basic plan also talks about some of the general concept of operations. So how the city is going to organize itself, how we're going to work with other agencies and other jurisdictions. There's elements like the disaster declaration process and how that works in order to be able to request additional support from outside agencies. There's also some information about general financial and logistics principles. So making sure we're following the right authorities there and the right policies that are in place. It includes things like what disaster assistance is available, how are we going to pursue reimbursement afterwards, and documentation requirements in an event. So the basic plan, again, just kind of that general overview, providing guidance for an overall perspective. The next piece of the CEMP are the annexes. So the annexes are part of the CEMP, but are also standalone plans on their own. They address in more detail either very specific information about an incident or a hazard, or an annex might reference specific functions or a service that the city may be carrying out. There's 28 of these annexes now, some of which address those incidents, and a full list is available on the plan that we've linked to as well. So these annexes provide more detail, and they're all formatted in the same way. They start with considerations. So some of those initial actions for that specific incident or function, what are the first things that the city should be looking to do? It also provides some background information to help inform decision-making for that particular incident or function. So even if you don't have a lot of technical knowledge or information about a volcano or an earthquake, it provides some basic information there to begin forming that response in the disaster. Each annex also talks about roles and responsibilities for different departments. And these are different from the basic plan in that they address specific activities and actions that those departments or divisions may be taking in that, either for that function or that incident. It identifies the major players both in the city and outside external partners, and also what the support role for the rest of those departments who may not have a major role in it. What do they still need to continue thinking about? Because everybody has a role in each different scenario. The last piece of the annexes are prescripted public messaging. We understand that getting information out to the public as quickly as possible is very important. So by prescripting some of the messages, instructions we intend to send out, information about where to find updates. If we can get those prescripted ahead of time, suitable for social media platforms, we can get those out quicker. And it provides a little bit of a streamlined approach for getting that information out while we're beginning that response. So there are 20 annexes. I said now they're being, some of them are already being updated. The pandemic, for instance, we wrote before COVID happened and now have learned so much. So that is one that is undergoing some maintenance, and I think will be for a little bit of time as we figure out the best way to capture all this information from the last couple of years. So we'll continue to build annexes for new incidences, for new functions, as we learn more information, have more planning efforts. So talk a little bit about the playbook format. So this plan isn't necessarily meant to be read from beginning to end. We want it to be easy to access the particular information that you're looking for that specific event. So as an example, if there was a volcanic eruption in one of our state's volcanoes, and that event is either occurring or imminent, one could go to the volcano annex, get some basic information there about kind of the background and what the impacts may be, so the city can begin bringing the right people to the table, begin getting everything lined up and ready to go for that response and anticipate what we're going to be doing. So in addition to the annex, Brent mentioned the plays. So these are things that we are building and collecting that will support the actions that are listed out in the annexes and the basic plan. The plays are separate documents, and some of them may be part of departments' plans already. They may be something that departments in the city already do, perhaps aren't written down. And the goal is to have these plays written down and collected in a way that they're easily accessible, so that when an action is needed or activity is needed, they can be referenced quickly. And these plays are a lot more detailed than what the annex may be for specific events. So in our volcano example, there may be a play for establishing a shelter in a city facility, or motor vehicles may have a play for how to address the ashfall and how it is destructive to engines in vehicles and how we can still be able to move around. There may be a play for addressing the debris of all this ash that's not going anywhere, and what are we going to do with it, and having a specific play for that. So these plays are very detailed, and they would have information about what the resource needs are. How much staff does it take? What kind of materials are needed? What is the cost likely to be? How much time does it take? And it really provides a great way to collect that information, to anticipate what those needs are going to be, and to be able to quickly act on them, because some of that thinking has been done already. And these plays are another thing that we'll always be adding to and always finding new things as there's real life events. It's a great way to capture how we address something to be able to use again in the future. And we'll continue building them as we learn new things about different hazards and responses. So before I open up for any questions, let's talk a little about the next steps. So after promulgation of this plan, we begin distributing and training on this plan. We'll have the plan available on the city website, and we will also have 2 hard copies available, 1 in each library in the city, so the public may view it there if needed. And we'll keep updating as necessary. Every disaster, every exercise, we learn something new, and major changes will be recorded there. The next update of this plan is not due until December 2026. It's updated on a 5-year cycle, but with COVID, every jurisdiction was granted 1 year. So we will be updating ours to December 2026 will be the next date. And just sort of related, we've been talking with administration about being able to provide some more detailed information to council members about what city council's responsibilities would be in a disaster and emergency, and be able to answer some more specific questions along those lines. So with that, I thank everybody for your time. Any questions?
Sarah, thank you for that. I really appreciate that. And I appreciate that we will have like a refresher about our role in any emergency, maybe probably a different response for each of those annexes. We'll go down the roll, see if any council members have questions, and we'll start with Councilmember Bader.
Thanks, Sarah. A great presentation and reassuring to know all the work that's been done to support this. Just obviously, you know, the role that all our residents and people who come into Everett for work have to play in being prepared themselves. And I know you guys regularly emphasize that, and appreciate the fact that that just keeps getting emphasized and emphasized whatever chance we have. Other than that, no questions or comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Roberts.
Thanks, President Stonecipher, and thank you, Sarah, for the presentation. I do have a couple of questions. I had an opportunity to go through and look at the materials, and I like the organization in terms of playbooks, so that people can move quickly to the element that happens to be front and center, so to speak. But just a couple of thoughts. First, I also appreciated the fire, flood, and air quality piece. On the air quality piece, it references the Northwest Clean Air Agency, and that's not the agency that we serve under. We serve under the Puget Sound Clean Air Agency. Northwest, I think, is the one in Bellingham and north of here. And it led me to wonder whether or not you will be populating those playbooks with links or bookmarks and contact information for the different organizations. Because as I went through the different ones, I saw that they were listed, or there were a lot of listings, but if I had to, in short notice, reach them, that information could easily be there, and it wasn't. So I just wonder if that's something that either you're planning to or could put in there. And I'll stop there, but I have some other questions as well. Or
Sure,
would you
yeah.
like me to ask all the questions and then let you just give me all of
Do
them?
that.
In the case of the one thing that I found missing was heat. in terms of an event. And unfortunately, I think it's one that we probably would want to add. And there may also be a way of looking at what you might call climate influenced events, which are heat, fire, flood, and air quality. Unfortunately, we're seeing them on an annualized basis, at least one of those almost every year. And so we see them more frequently. How severe, of course, that changes, but we are seeing them increase in the frequency, the numbers, the intensity, and the severity being the financial impact. So I wonder aloud whether there's some wish to try to look at those a little differently. The third or fourth question, I guess, is I wondered when we think about shelters, if there is an exercise or some connection in terms of the interlocal agreements that are referenced in the document, whether schools should be part of that because they're readily available for shelter when we need them. And I didn't see that in there, but that may be something to address. I did see the reference to NGOs, but I immediately thought about the Red Cross or some others, and again thought, well, there could be some links there that connect them. And then last, but back to those, the heat, fire, flood, air quality questions, I got to thinking that particularly in the case of floods and heat, well, for that matter, air quality, those are things that we can anticipate based on the information that we would have from different sources. For instance, flooding would obviously be National Weather Service and NOAA, which will be able to tell us what's going on with our rivers and so on. But there are others. And in any case, it seems that in some of those instances, again, in the flood and air quality and heat, they can be anticipated. Obviously, an earthquake cannot be. So, I mean, there are just certain things that maybe we begin thinking more in terms of more regular monitoring for some of these events because they're simply happening with a greater intensity and frequency. So those are the questions I have. I don't know if, and I'm not expecting you to just answer all of those in the moment. I'm really just trying to lay them out because I think that they may be some things that get built into the plan as we go.
Sure, I'll try to speak to some of them, and Brent, feel free to jump in as well and interrupt me. For the contact information, so we did begin actually adding some of that contact information, but then it began to be a kind of an overbearing task of making sure they stay updated. And what we do have is in our Emergency Operations Center, we have a resource book that has all the current phone numbers, websites listed there. And so we opted to not include them in 2 locations and then potentially not update them in 1. We did include them in some instances, but I think that just in terms of managing that information, we chose to not put too much of that in there. But we do have those other resource guides, and all of our emergency management duty officers have that same resource book with those connections, in addition to our Emergency Operations Center. Heat is definitely a topic that is going to be reoccurring, similar to our snow. You know, we have our snow events that happen every year, and now in the summer we'll be having our heat events. So I do anticipate that will be an annex in the future, and on our list of ones to add to. As far as the shelters, the schools are a great resource, and from previous conversations with the Red Cross, they've not been quick to identify schools as the first because they want schools to be able to stay open for their own functions and get students back to school. But we will revisit that plan and add those schools in as a potential resource, not necessarily the first, but to be able to make sure that we do keep that in mind because they are great locations. They're spread across the city. They're accessible and familiar to our citizens and residents. So we'll be sure to note that as well. And then with the anticipated one, so I did speak a lot about this being response oriented, but the CEMP does cover all phases. So it does lead into the prevention and preparedness, mitigation, and also the recovery. It is heavily response focused, especially with some of the annexes, but we do want to continue to build out, okay, in times of preparedness or mitigation, what are the things that we could be doing in the roles and responsibilities? And these are all things that we anticipate we'll be adding to and updating and providing some more detail as we go along and learn these things and have more people reviewing it and commenting. So I hope that answers enough of your questions.
Oh, yeah, well, I appreciate it. And I really do appreciate that as I was thinking about the links question, or what I call the bookmarks question. I appreciate your answer. I thought, well, the issue of whether it's on this paper isn't as important as it's available in the EOC and people can get access to the information. So however they get there, as long as they can get there quickly and that. So thanks very much.
Welcome.
Thank you. Council Member Tui.
Yeah, I want to thank Sarah. That was a great presentation, and Brent also. Timing. I mean, whenever we see these terrible disasters around the world and our country, we realize how vitally important this is for our city, and the more we can do to be prepared, we just can't do enough. And so we just hope that we don't have to face some of these huge challenges other communities have. But I appreciate your work and really enjoyed hearing all the presentation, and thank you so much.
Thank you. Councilmember Moore.
I just thank you for the presentation.
Councilmember Murphy.
I also would thank you, Sarah and Brent, for the presentation. When I was council president a few years ago, I had the opportunity to go out and tour the Emergency Operations Center and was really kind of blown away at the level of planning and the facilities and resources that have been brought to bear. And I guess I shouldn't have been surprised, because obviously our community is going to look to us as city leaders to have all of these things figured out in the event of an emergency. And so just really glad to see that the planning continues and the in-depth updating happens frequently. So kudos to you, and thanks for sharing all this with us. Much appreciated.
Thank you. And I have nothing to add. Sarah, I'd like to thank you and Brent for your time this evening and helping us understand what's going on. I'll try to have some time to look through the plan. In my day job, I work with a lot of schools, so the incident command structure is very familiar to me, but I'm sure we are utilizing it in a much, much deeper and more robust way. I look forward to getting our new council members who will be joining us next year up to speed on this as well. So more to come on that. I'm sure Deb Williams will be coordinating that with you. That brings us to the end of our agenda. As noted at the start of the meeting, and I believe will be provided on the screen, you can contact Deb Williams in the council office for instructions on watching, listening, or participating in our weekly meeting. She can be reached by phone at 257-8703 or email at dwilliams@everettwa.gov. We are now going to move into our executive session. That's expected to last 40 minutes, and we will reconvene and adjourn on this Zoom with no announcement anticipated. This is the Everett City Council meeting of December 15th, 2021. We are in executive session and we will need to extend our executive session for an additional 10 minutes. We will reconvene in this Zoom meeting and there's no anticipated announcement. Oh, I'm sorry. I thought we had no announcements.
No, we do have two.
Okay, please bring them forth.
The first is a workers' comp claim. A former employee, Mr. Gluarte, was involved in a rollover accident while driving a Vector truck that significantly affects his ability to work in the future. We have an opportunity to settle that claim for $300,000, which under the circumstances we think is a reasonable settlement. So we're asking for a motion to authorize the mayor to execute the necessary settlement documents to resolve that claim.
Moore moves, yes.
Bader, second.
Just a point of order. When we say that there's no announcement anticipated, are we still okay?
Yes,
taking action?
I believe that when I asked for executive session, I said that two matters would result in potential council action to follow.
I thought it said no announcement too.
Yeah, and my script said no announcement. So I was
So
under the understanding these were coming forth next week.
So David Hall, most of them are coming forth next week, but David Hall, when he, under city attorney comments, said that we were going to have executive session, there would be two things to follow. I do recall that. And Sharon Fuller, as clerk, can you please verify?
Mayor, that is correct. Although President Stonecipher did come back when we came back to the meeting.
Yeah, my script is incorrect. So I think we
Yeah,
need to have a tighter.
That could be
on
for
this.
future meetings, but what is relevant for purposes of complying with the law is that before we went into executive session, we did say that there would be two matters that required council action. And the purpose of that is to let the public and the media know that if they want to stick around, there will be two actions to follow. So we're in compliance with the law to move forward and take action on those two matters.
You said that, but I said there was going to be no announcement. I just want to clarify that that is what I said when we went into an executive session initially.
Well, I think that we're okay. If you want to put these off until next week, we can do that. Entirely up to you.
I am not the attorney. I'm relying on you to let us know what we should be doing. But I'm just saying that what was stated by me was what was on my script, that there would be no announcement. And I said it both then and when I went back in to ask for more time.
Well, to be safe, why don't we put it off until next week? And let's just introduce it under council comments, since we've already briefed it in executive session. It's a little bit late to get on the agenda, but it's a regularly scheduled meeting, so we don't have to have it on the agenda, and we can handle that next week if that's okay with you.
Okay, I think so. And this has happened before, so I think we probably need to make sure that we are in communication with Deb more carefully on my script, because I don't think the city attorney, you're probably not reviewing my script.
Yeah, the attorney doesn't review the script, but we did let Deb know, but I know it's a lot to manage every week. So we'll try to remind her every time there's an executive session to have the attorney double check it.
Yeah.
I just think if it's legally permissible under the city attorney's comments tonight, if you want to make that determination. I see Scott Bader cringing, but there's an essence of time, but okay.
I don't see any downside. What's the downside to waiting a week?
Neither of these matters has a deadline that will be affected by acting next week.
Okay. All right. Yeah, I would side with Brenda. I think it's just, I don't practice as an attorney for a living.
Point of order, do we need a motion to table, or do the motion maker just withdraw the motion?
We haven't had a motion yet. Did we have a motion?
Yeah,
I did.
a motion in a second.
I
would withdraw the motion.
And I concur.
Withdraw.
Fine.
Sorry, I follow the script. I know what I don't know.
No problem. No harm done.
All right.
Now adjourned.
With that, we are, with no further business, we will be adjourned.